Hello humans, hello humans. It's January the 11th. Yeah, and it's a little after 9 in the morning. Getting a late start because of the weather. I have a lot of chores to do too, so it's gonna be a long morning. My typical shopping expedition here is 138.8 miles. My card tells me that. That's round trip on all of this stuff. And that's the usual if I've got to go and do house kind of stuff, dropping off paperwork or signing, or doing things like that for the county. And these kinds of things, he can add a lot more mileage. Anyway, so terrible storms these last few days. The other day, we had 2 inches of rain in about 7.5 hours. Really flooding down, huge rain. Winds here 110 miles an hour in snow. Call me Falls Pass up here. That's a lot of miles per hour for your winds. We were getting 50 in gusts of 60 down here on the coast. So, it's a fierce storm heading inland. It's gonna really cause problems for all the people in the Midwest. If the cold comes down, you guys are good. Just get dumped on, huge Pineapple Express. And we have not experienced anything this fierce in these last 5 years. We've lived here on the coast almost 6 years now. Just incredible amount of rain and wind and stuff just coming down everywhere. Trees all over had to get out and clean up the debris off the driveway just to get the cars out this morning. And we had already had to change around schedules and stuff just because of the storms and what was going on anyway. So we're into this period of hyper novelty. A lot of the woo people are starting to recognize it. They're saying, oh look at all the stuff that's coming out. We're losing all these authorities. And so now understand that hyper novelty is something that we've never experienced in our lives because we've been always living under the octopus of control by the Elohim worship cult, controlling the whole planet. And so there's always been this idea of, and I'm gonna put it in quotes here, air quotes, authority, okay? The author, the creator of it, the author, that's what that means, is creator, the artist, gives permission or gives some validation, okay. So that's what authority means. It is validation by the author, or validation of the author's work, etc., right? But you can rely on it. And so what's happening now is that reliability, that authority is falling off to the side. And this makes people's minds, especially those people that are intensely schooled, okay? So the more schooling you've gone through, the higher degree, etc., the more this is going to impact you, and it's going to impact you in ways that are so subtle. As an academic he had to have authority behind him. He doesn't have faith in his own conclusion, so to speak, unless it's something that he's been schooled to think about. And so it's that schooling part of this. It's gonna really mess up all of these people with the hypernormality. So Brett Weinstein gets on Tucker. He has this big interview. He has an odd and unfortunate for him choice of words, which is, he was talking about how he calls it Goliath, okay. The yellow team worship cult, it's this Goliath that sits on the planet, and it's not really a Goliath, it's not a giant. It's lots and lots of little tiny, small-minded psychopaths, and they're sociopaths that support them. There's a lot of the guys, but it's not giant. We don't have anything to fear from it. This is not any, in Weinstein's Jewish and I don't know. He's defaulting back to some kind of biblical reference, right? The slaying of the giants now, look how ironic that is. That he's an evolutionary biologist, and denies the existence of giants. He denies that there are all these other species of humans, of hominids on this planet. He won't address it because of what it does to his understanding, right? It removes authority from him when there are conflicts to the authority that he lives by, and he lives by this authority that he was taught in this school, that his mind was codified and rigidified and constrained by this method of thinking, and in the ordinary course of events in his life, it's been perfectly fine and he's been up on a top dog level, gaining status and superiority and all of this kind of stuff. Then it all came crashing down and the Cultural Revolution here in Washington State, he gets thrown out of Evergreen, and now he's come to this conclusion over these years, that all the other people that were deinstitutionalized, okay, all the other what he calls, I think you called them like original, or they were able to think right, they're self-referencing in their thinking, and they were all kicked out of the institutions. And he says, oh, well, that makes a quote, dream team, the people to fight the Goliath, because all of these academics, who are now deinstitutionalized, will join up together even though they're mainly loners, and he admits this, right, that it's the loners, the iconoclasts that are really the free thinkers, and he says that these were kicked out of the institutions and these are all gonna bind together into this group and it's gonna be a dream team for fighting Goliath. And he got tons of stuff for it, tons of stuff, right? And he does not even recognize the offense that he gave to everybody with his statement, because another tree down. So because he's making the assumption that he's still working within the academic framework. Oh, it's good that all these academics got kicked out, cause now they'll all band together and form some new kind of academy and go after the Goliath, and he doesn't understand that this is the removal of authority. This is hyper-novelty. We won't be doing those kinds of things. And so it's just like has totally missed him, his mind. He does not understand how he insulted everybody who's not an academic, who's been fighting for this on this stuff for all these years. So I found it very personally offensive. I don't take umbrage at it, but it is offensive because I've been fighting this stuff since November 22nd, 1963. And he's gonna say that, oh, the dream team and it's all these academics. No, let us point out that none of those academics would have been deinstitutionalized had they gone their regular route and just simply been compliant, right? They were usually compliant, they were deep into academia, they were codified, stratified, accredited, etc., etc. And so they were like hypernormies, and he thinks hypernormies are gonna take on Goliath. No, Brett, I'm sorry, guy. You're just missing it totally. And then he gets on to how he sort of tried to engage and sort of tried to apologize to some of these people to clarify what he was meaning, and he still missed it. He still missed that we're not pissed about him saying a dream team that excludes us. We're pissed about him saying dream team, which it does exclude us because we're not academics. But we're pissed that he fails to understand that academia is part of the problem. A lot of these guys that are on his dream team were quite happy to cooperate with the Elohim worship cult, the WEF, the Mother Weefers, and create the exact situation that we've got now. Bear in mind that it's academics that have done all this stuff to us, right? All the academics that are in positions of power that created and did all of this, all of these people using the beating is about the head with the anvil of science, we're all academics, and he just does not grasp this, right? So haha, see, he's just not a pirate kind of guy. He just does not have any faith in his own mental acuity, outside of the level of training that he's got. And that's probably why it took him 3 years to come to all of these conclusions, and the conclusions missed the mark, okay? So hyper-novelty is gonna be really hard on Bread. It's gonna be worse on those people that are still trapped within academia, because they still look to the institution as their authority, and all of these things stem from the Elohim worship cult from us having been abused for thousands of years, depending on how we interpret some of this. What we know for sure that the Jews have been abused for 2,000 solid years under the reign of Yahweh in his ilk, right? Lord Yahweh, and that's how they put it in the Bible, and that's how it is in the Torah, all right. It is not Yahweh, Lord God of all. It is Lord Yahweh or Colonel Yahweh, all right. So all these people that are academics will have no authority. So if Brett comes and says some conclusion about some science thing, now I'll have to say, well, Brett, you know, all of the institutions and all of the papers, all the peer-reviewed is messed up too, by the way, because you allow them, the stupidest person in the collective, to decide whether or not your paper is valid, and it's like, no, you know, it's valid or it's not. I don't need to have it reviewed by a bunch of idiots to see. And also, by the way, just getting back to this real quick, we now know that all these academic institutions, especially all the gender studies and all of these guys, are so stupid that they publish bogus papers, that there's a group out there deliberately submitting papers that are 100% bogus. All you gotta do is read them and you'll see how wacky and stupid they are. And nobody ever does, cause they're accepted for publication just because they've got the right credentialism around them. Anyway, so Brett and all of his ilk are gonna be very, very, very upset by the lack of authority, and it's gonna be kind of like, you know, the sheriff shows up, or the state patrol shows up at your house and you tell him, no, I'm not going to let you arrest me. You guys go away. You have no authority. Our governor is invalid. He was not elected. He was selected by George Soros. And I refuse to recognize any authority from you guys, and you can arrest me and I will do everything I can to prevent you, and I'll take it up to the point where no one gets hurt. But I'll resist, and then after I've resisted I will do everything in my power to gain advantage over you within our corrupted legal system by all means necessary. And so you have no authority. You do not have the authority to make these demands of me or to insist on any of this stuff. I'm just not complying, and you know. So I'm a pain in the ass. And I'm gonna be a real problem for you guys. Anyway, so we're seeing this all over. This lack of authority is gonna really hurt a lot of people in a lot of academically controlled industries. So I run into this with my blood work, right? So I go in and I get tested every 2 months and I have the blood drawn. And so I can check for all these markers, right? No, have neuropathic incidents, right? Or they develop a neuropathy, some kind of a neuro problem somewhere in any way. So the nurse there said, well, damn, you know, and he said it like this. He said, I sure hope that's not the case because I took 2 shots, and that's what he said. Now on those kind of people I just won't press. I won't. I told him, I said, in my opinion you need to be taking the tokinase to clear your vessels at a very bare minimum, and you should get online and look at these protocols for getting that stuff out of you. And then I just let it drop, right? Cause I don't wanna cause worry on this guy's mind, but he's a normie, a deep normie, regular kind of normie, family man kind of thing, and now he's questioning his institution that he works for and the big pharma that they made him take the shot from, and he is aware of the damage he and I didn't have to bring it up. I mean, he knew he had that attitude. He's worried about this stuff. He knows that there's something wrong, and so it's coming up to the point where he will soon acknowledge that openly and will want to discuss it, cause he's a proactive kind of guy and he'll want to do things to try and remove this material from his body. So you'll want to take action, but in order for him to take action, understand that he has to break that authority in his mind that said that shot thought was safe and effective, and he works for that authority, so it's really rough on him, and we got a lot of nurses going through that, but he also had to acknowledge whatever right, so 21 of them that he's aware of have kicked the bucket. They've gone to their reward by way of the Elohim worship cult, and so he now has to contend with this well-known another tree down. So, I'm seeing it around me in the normies, right? The breakdown of authority is starting. On some of these normies, it's terribly hard because they work for the authority. They need to believe that it's not going to harm them, because then they've got to start taking action, and then they're gonna sweat every single day of the rest of their lives. And that's the situation they are in now. Brett Weinstein's issue. Okay. So this guy with hyper-novelty, my nurse fellow, he's low enough and he's got enough of a focus on just staying alive that he will start shifting his respect for authority over to his own understanding of things and become more accepting of his own conclusions as authoritative, so to speak. It is valid against any other authority, and he'll stand up for it once he starts feeling better as a result of taking supplements and so on. So next time I'm going in, I'm gonna load the guy up, right? I'm just gonna say, you can take it or not, I'll just leave it here. I don't give a shit, you throw it away, I don't care, but this shit will help you. Here's the protocol, go look this up online, and here's some of the material. I'll give him nattokinase, I'll give him some quercetin, which is the anti-spike zinc ionophore. I'll make sure he's got balanced zinc with copper in it, and a couple of other items relative to getting rid of this shit. Anyway, so now Brett Weinstein does not have this problem as far as we know. They were talking against it this whole time, trying to puzzle it all out. He and his wife were both academics, so he didn't even have the benefit of having an iconoclast in the family to come on up and jog his thinking. So they had to work through it in this state academic fashion of having authority behind each and every one of the steps in order that they might feel that the steps are valid, that the conclusions are valid, each point along the line. Whereas the woo people, we've got, we rely on intuition, right? Knowledge that has no direct source. It doesn't have an authority on the other side of it, and it's just something you know. Now even Brett says 17 million, and my thinking is closer to 35 million, all right? And there's some places where they'll acknowledge, but as I say, I think it's closer to 35 million, and they're dropping like mad in India now from this. Anyway, hyper-novelty is gonna hit these people because there's gonna pull the rug of authority out from underneath them. The state is no authority. The government and people used to get into power. They're not authorities. They have no absolute sure certain knowledge. And if you keep going back, we're now going to remove the ultimate authority, which is the yellow team. So we have the academia because the Jews needed organizations in order to control people, and so they came up with this. So understand that the Elohim are organizational animals, right? In ways that we cannot conceive, because these guys, these Elohim, have incredibly long lives. So their organizational structures might persist for 20 or 30,000 years, and look at how inculcated and rigidified and constrained and so forth those will be at the end of that period of time. Good coffee. With the storms and stuff, it's difficult to sleep, the house shaking from the winds, that kind of thing. Anyway, so are academics lacking authority for anything? How are they going to exist? How will they function? Well, we know that the institutions won't function. Already we're seeing signs that people are keeping their kids out of schools, right? That a lot of people said to their kids, "No, I'm sorry, you're 18 and you want to go to college. You've been accepted, but I'm not letting you go because those fuckers in North America." Rather, let me just put it that way. But all this is participating in our period of hyper-novelty where no authority will exist. And that's gonna, somebody pops up and says, I'm from the WHO and I'm gonna say I'm armed. Get the fuck off my property. I don't accept the WHO as being any kind of authority or the UN. If you're on my soil, and you're wearing a UN uniform, and you're carrying weapons, and you have a blue helmet on, and you think you're going to impose your order, your commands on us, well, we're just not gonna take it. We're not gonna be compliant, we're not going to accept this, and we're hardened and now we know that. These fuckers are, this is all self-evident and now the media is no longer even able to deny a lot of this. We see the panic in the media. They're so afraid of Donald Trump coming back. Well, yeah, because we're gonna undo their world order. The new world order is getting that shit kicked out of it, and Michelle Obama, Big Mike, Edward Robinson Vaughn, has every reason to fear, he's done lots and lots and lots of crimes, and so all these people they're gonna have an accounting, and, to a certain extent, it's a good time because we will have that accounting. 2024 is gonna be one of the years of justice. It's gonna take maybe 5 or 10 years to work through all this shit, and in the meantime, of course, we're gonna have the total lack of hierarchical authority, and so it will seem chaotic and mob-driven, and this is what really is freaking out the academics. So like when the mobs came for Brett Weinstein, he was apparently able to talk to some of the individuals. That's really a stupid way to approach a mob. You just get the fuck out of the way and deal with it later when you're not at risk, right? When you're outnumbered that way, you don't stop and try and talk to your enemies to talk them down, and you're not gonna be able to change those minds. And he's an idiot anyway because he lived in that culture and he didn't see it developing around him, So his ability to have accurate conclusions and far-reaching judgments based on a combination of intuition and factual on-the-ground knowledge is somewhat limited in my opinion, right? But he's a good normie for me to use as a linguistic temporal marker because as his language changes, he is reflecting a leading edge. Although it's not very leading, academic minds, and that's what's gonna be first at risk here is going to hyper-novelty will be the undoing of all the academic minds. And we'll see people will hold up various different journals and such as being, quote, authorities. It's like fuck, there ain't no authority, these people been lying to us for hundreds of years. Academia has no fucking credibility at all. Each and every individual study needs to be examined on all the particulars to decide where they fucked up because most of them are fucked up. Hyper-novelty is gonna hit a lot of the institutional people really fucking hard. Okay. Whether they're living and working in the institution in a minor role and having to believe in the authority of the institution and its reason for existence, or whether they're deep into the academia and thinking that there is authority there. All of this shit's getting appended. It is appended now. It's just gonna take us a long time before the normies experience this appending now we've got. Revolution going on in Ecuador again. It's a turning over of authority. And it's gonna proceed all the way through, and of course in the middle of all of this we could. The yellow him coming back and all of the activity on the moon. There really does look like there's some kind of major on the moon. If you get out, I haven't had much opportunity for the last 7 days because of storms, but if you get out at night you look at the moon and you've got a decent telescope. Even it doesn't have to be a huge 400 magnifier or anything. You can see activity on the moon with like even the amount of magnification you get from your cell phone when you take photos. So I know people that have just snapped photos of the full moon and caught activity in the process just because of the happenstance of when they push the button to take the picture, and it's really increasing. So we're gonna have this particular evolution or appearance or unfolding, a manifestation and emergence of a non-authoritarian world. And we've never lived in that, right? None of us humans have ever lived in that world. I was born into a world where academia and authority and all of this stuff existed and has held sway all of my life, even though I knew and at any given point I was aware that, well, this is horseshit. This is bullshit, this all lies. You know, so why are these people going along with it? And I could never understand the compliant mindset, right? So I went to one instance of Sunday school when I was a kid. You know, we were in Germany. There was some level of benefit for being a normal person attending all of these things. You know, you got to do the same thing as all the other people in your organization, and so there was some benefit for my parents to like go to church and stuff they never did. My father thought it was a bunch of horseshit anyway, and they took me to Sunday school when we were trying to do this. You know, blend in so to speak, get accommodated in the new base because we're gonna be there for 3 years at least, and so we wanted to ease in anyway. So they took me to Sunday school. They thought that would be a good idea. I was really excited. I got all dressed up. I got to wear a suit, all of this kind of stuff, right? I'm a little kid, and I went in there, and probably wasn't even 5 minutes before I was fighting with the person that was telling me this stuff because he was trying to get across the idea, and he just said, "No, you can't think about it. You have to accept it," and that's when things went south. Anyway, so it didn't work out too well. So one exposure to religion that way, active and so on. Ever since then, I've been investigating because I thought, even as a kid, you know, 10 years old, I thought, okay, this is really screwy. Why are these people believing this stuff, you know? It's not factual, it's fairy tales. Anyway, under the circumstances, I'm gonna do well in hyper-novelty, you know. I am my own authority. My thoughts are self-referentially secure that way, so I'm not particularly worried about it. But all kinds of people are gonna come unglued because they won't have that authority and they just won't know what to do. Look at how often in your life now, someone just simply complies and puts out a statement of, they're doing something because of, and then they state an authority, you know, because government tells me so, blah blah blah, right? So expect this year will be the year of the great tax revolt. Expected the IRS is gonna be in a world of hurt here relative to all of this because of the situation of the authority breaking down and the hatred for what to America, to the US. And so it's just gonna be a fun year, things are just gonna go crazy. This is hypernormality. It's gonna be all these people acting out, and remember, there's about a third of the population now that was hardcore and said, no, get away from me, okay. That third is already living in a hyper-novel world where they don't have that authority of big pharma, government, etc. And so, it's a good contrast. So I agree with Einstein that way, that we have a good group, right? We're not a team because a team requires organization, structure, authority, someone in charge, right? We are a group, we are a self-organizing collective, which means there ain't no authority, and nobody's voice has any more weight to it than anybody else's voice. Anyway, guys, take care, I'll do some more of these later. I gotta get this shit done, at least it's not quite raining on me at the moment.